Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org and I'm back with another tutorial for the new Boston. In this video we're going to be looking briefly but importantly at SQL injection within this application. There will be another video on SQL injection that you can go and look at, but in this example we're logging a user in but we're not protecting our query. Now our query looks like this. And I've briefly spoken about the security for this query. Now what's happening is that we're allowing data to be freely posted into this form, and then what we're doing is we are putting it into a query which will actually allow anyone to perform an SQL injection. I'm not going to go into this too much. However, what could happen is a user could say specify this value for username. They could do a single quotation mark, and then they could say or, and then they could do two single quotation marks, and then they could do an equals and a single quotation mark. Now what I'm highlighting in blue here is possible to be entered into the username or password field. So if the user was to enter this, the query would read true to some extent. I mean, we've encrypted our password, so we can look at this either way, but this means that an SQL query can be performed. And like I said, if you are not familiar with SQL injection, sorry, not query, the query has been performed, but SQL injection can be performed. If you're not familiar with this, then either read up about it or watch my other tutorial. So what can we do to somewhat prevent SQL injection? Well, what we first of all need to do is think about a function that will protect against, and this function is called MySQL real escape string. Now what this does is it will add slashes and escape characters rather, hence the name escape string, that look like characters that might be used in an SQL injection attack. So first of all, I'm going to end our query here and just concatenate on, and then concatenate on the rest of the query. So I've just basically ended the string, concatenated on username, and concatenated on a start of the string. So this will work, and so will our password hash. Let's just end that and start that there. So you should be familiar with concatenation. Now what I want to do is encase username and password hash with this function. So I'm going to say MySQL underscore real underscore escape underscore string, and I'm going to do the same with password. Even though we're using the password as a password hash, I'm still going to do it. So MySQL real escape string. Now bear in mind that this function can only be used when we've opened a valid MySQL connection. So you couldn't use it in everyday applications, for example just normal form validation where you're not connecting to a database and not performing a query. You need to connect to a database beforehand. So this function has been particularly designed for queries themselves. So now we've somewhat protected against our query, let's go back and test if our login still works. So I'm going to log in as Alex, and my password is pass123. Let's click login, and you can see that you're logged in. So we can log ourselves out, and via Billy account we can do the same thing. So pass123, log in, and you're logged in. Okay, so that's a brief note on how we're going to protect against that SQL injection in our query, but like I said, do research into this because there are other ways to secure a lot better. So what we've done is we've selected just the field that we want from the users table where the ID is equal to the user ID that's logged in. Then we're running the query and checking if that works, and if that does work, we're work, sorry, we're returning the result, and the result takes in the query that we've run. We're getting the first row. Remember, it starts at 0. Even though our ID starts at 1, that's just a superficial value. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a data that's stored. But in actual fact, we're returning row 0, and we're grabbing the field name field that we specified. Okay, so let's. In fact, we can improve this still, but I'll do that in a minute. I'll show you that it works first. We could even enclose this in an if statement and return. If it's not worked, we can return the value not found. So let's do that. I guess we can do that now. So if this returns a value, we execute something in here. Now we need to assign a variable to this, so I can say query result is equal to that. If it does work, return query result. So we're constructing our query. We're running the query. If the query is running, or has run successfully without error, we're executing this block in here. We're then, in an if statement, setting a variable called query result to this. If this query, or if this function rather, works, we then return the value we've just set here, using these that I've already explained. So let's give it a go. Let's say, we'll just do it down here for now. So I'm going to echo get user field, and I want to get first name. So we're applying now the field name that we want to get. Remember, the field name first name will be equal to Alex in this case, because we're selecting from where the ID is 1. Okay, so let's test to see if this works, and then we can apply it to this you've logged in sentence. Let's go back to our page and refresh. Hopefully that works. Yeah, that's worked. So we've got Alex being returned. So now let's enter a field name that doesn't exist. I don't exist. And let's refresh. Now we've not returned anything. That's because this has returned as false. If we just had this on our own, we'd have a nasty SQL error in the middle of something. So if we can't find a field, we just don't display it, rather than causing a big error inside our program. So let's go back to where we are, to index.php. What we can now do is, if logged in, we can say first name is equal to get user field first name. Oh no. First name. Then we can say surname is equal to get user field surname, and then we can incorporate these inside of this sentence. So you're logged in, first name, surname. Oh, remember we're using single quotation marks, so we need to escape that for first name, and then we do a space, and we can escape that again and say surname. So you're logged in, escape this string, concatenate on the first name, and then we do another space, concatenate on the surname, and then we continue the string. So now we can see that on index.php it's taking the information relevant to us. So let's just put a full stop after that. Refresh, so it looks a bit better. Okay, so you're logged in, Alex Garrett. Now let's try it when we log out and log in as Billy. Okay, so you can see that it's now taking the data relevant to the user that's currently logged in, and it's displaying it back to us. So now we can supply any field we want, any field name we want inside here, and it will display it back to the user. So when you eventually use these examples for yourself, when you're learning, and you want to create the registration form, which we're going to do in the next stage, you can add as many fields as you want to your database, and then you can just use this function that we've created inside here, which will be available on any page that you want it to be, by just requiring it up here. You can just use this function to select any field. So if we now even go and add a field to this, say we added, say, telephone number, we can then just re-specify that inside using this function. So that's basically how we are grabbing data about the user and displaying it onto our page. Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org with another video for the New Boston. In this part of the user login registration tutorial, we're going to be looking at registering a user, because obviously what we've done is we've created our database here, and we've created our table, and we've given it this data. So we've got Alex and Billy, we've got 2 records inside. Now we will obviously want to let the user register for themselves, and this is going to be a simple process. We're not going to be talking about including emailing the user to tell them that they're registered. We're just going to be inserting the data through a form. So let's create a new file, and let's save this as register.php. Now the first thing that we want to do is obviously require in the files that we need. So we've got core.inc.php, which is important because what we're first of all doing is we are, oh no, sorry, core, don't think we need to include that. Yeah, we do, because we've got the logged in here. Yeah, okay. So we've also got, no, that's fine, yeah. So what we need to do is in register.php include this. We need to say if not logged in, we need to register the user. Otherwise, if the user is logged in, so else logged in, you're already registered and logged in. So we're essentially just creating a check. Let's just put an escape character there to get rid of that, to make sure this is processed, this single quotation mark. We need to first of all check if the user's not logged in before we register them. So otherwise we can say register. Okay, so let's go to our browser and test this. We're already logged in as Billy, so let's go to register.php and see what it says. Right, so if not, oh sorry, I've got the parentheses on that there, so let's refresh. Oh no, okay. Oh, I see, we've got else if there. Okay, so a couple of mistakes there on my part. Okay, so let's refresh. You're already registered and logged in. So now what happens if we go back to index.php and we click on the log out button? We've now logged out, so presented back with our login form. Let's go again to register.php and we're given the option to register. So let's escape out of PHP first of all to create our form. We don't want to be echoing our whole registration form because that could get too much data that we need to echo out, and it's going to start to look messy and it's going to slow our page down, particularly if we've got a lot of HTML to output. So I'm just going to end PHP there and start up a tag again there. So our if statement block here to here is still going to work even though we're escaping out and then back into PHP. So let's just demonstrate that by writing register form just as an example. Let's refresh, and you can see that even though we've escaped out of PHP, we can still process HTML here. So it's almost as if you were writing echo. So let's begin to build our form up. So we are creating the outline of our form, then we'll fill in all the properties. So the action, we're going to be going back to register.php, so register.php, and the method is going to be post, because remember we're going to be sending quite a lot of data. We don't want it to come up in the URL bar as get posted information. So let's complete our form, the necessary fields we need to include. So the first one will be username. We can break down now, say input type equals text. In fact, we'll keep this on one line just to keep things simple. And name equals username. Okay, break down a couple of times. Obviously you can use better HTML, make it look a lot better, maybe use some CSS to format the style of everything, but for now I'm just keeping it very simple so we can focus on the PHP side of things. So password, we want to input type equals password, name equals password, and we want to break down once again. Now what we need to do is we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to say password, let's just put our colon in there, password again. Okay, so we want to ask the user to enter a password again. So I'm going to name this field password underscore again. Now what we want to do is we want to ask for their first name and input type equals text, name equals first name. We want to break down a couple more, and we want to ask for their surname, colon there. So you can build the form how you like. You don't need to do it like me and make it look, you know, messy or anything like that. Obviously the last element we need of this form is the input or the submit button rather, so submit, and we're going to say name, or no, not name, value equals register. Okay, so we've got a registration button there. So let's go and preview our page. Let's refresh the page. Okay, so we've got this basic form separated down. Doesn't look very nice, but we're going to make it do its job. So we are going to require all fields. We've got username, we've got password, password again, first name and surname. Now these are a few things that we need to do in this process. We need to check if the username already exists in the database. That's important because we don't want to register a user with the same username. We need to check the password here against the password that's retyped to make sure it matches, because obviously we can't see the password that we're typing in. So if the user was to accidentally type, say, an extra character on the end, they might not be able to immediately see that, so they might not remember their password or know what their password is. And we've got first name and surname. We click register, this data is transferred and it goes into the database. Okay, so that's what we need to do. So the first thing to do is up here, I'm just trying to think if we should do it within this. Yeah, we'll do it within this. So if not logged in. So the first thing to do is to check if each form field exists in our form, so if everything's been correctly submitted, and we use the isSet function for this. So if isSet, we can pull this down and it's going to look a bit better readability. So if isSet $_post username and isSet $_post password and isSet $_post password again, and we go down the list and we just basically input and copy the code for everything. So we've got first name, and then we've got surname. So let's go and bring this up there and bring this up there. So we're using this to check if each field has been submitted. So we've got username, password, password again, username, password. That's fine. So now we open up to our block. Now what we need to do is check. In fact, we'll put this all on one line just so it's out of the way. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to check if they're empty or not. So let's come down again so it looks a bit neater. So if not empty, in fact what we'll do before this is we will create the variables in themselves. Because we've already checked, we're not going to receive an undefined index error. So now we can set them into their own variables because we know they exist. So username equals $_post username, password equals $_post password. Then we obviously have password again, and that equals $_post, and the field name is password again. Then we have first name, and that's equal to $_post first name, and the same with surname. So we're finally at the last one. You can probably see now why I didn't include irrelevant data that wouldn't fit the suitability of the tutorial. We're not going to go down and create loads of fields, otherwise we'd be here for hours typing out things, when I'm sure after this you'll be able to work out how to add your own fields. So we've got the fields that we need. Password again is something we're not going to be inserting into the database. That's just going to be for our checks inside here. The first thing we want to do is check if all fields have been filled in, because all fields are required. So let's say if not empty username and not empty password and not empty password again and not empty first name, and last but not least not empty surname. Okay, so now we can create a block to see if these are not empty, to run if these are not empty I mean, but otherwise we need to give a message to our user. We need to say please fill, or say all fields are required. Okay, so this is our error. Inside here we can echo OK for now, just to see if everything exists. If this OK does not echo, and nor does this, this will, we know that we might have an error, and we have inputted all data. We know that we might have an error with our naming or something like that, so always check that if you receive an error. So let's go ahead and click the button, register button, without typing any data in. We get the message all fields are required. Let's just enter 1. All fields are required, so let's fill them all out now. One, two, three. First name Alex, surname Garrett, and let's click register. And we've got the message up the top, OK. Now you'll probably notice that let's say we were to enter our username, our password, and our first name, but we were to exclude our surname and we click register, we have this error up here, but you've noticed that all the fields have now disappeared because we've resubmitted back to the page. We are not keeping these values. So what we do is we take these values here and we input them into our field, and we do this using the value here. So if I was to say value of username equals Alex, you can see that when we refresh, this says Alex. So what we can do is the data that's already submitted we can include within this form. So if we open up PHP tags, we're writing inline code now. We can echo out the username. So what will happen is the page will be submitted. This variable here will be set to Alex, for example. It might be set to Billy, it might be set to anything. But then we'll come down, and even if we get this error, we're still going to be putting this value in here. So let's do that to all fields, not the password fields, because we don't want them to remain. So for the first name, we want to open up PHP tags, echo first name, and for the surname, value equals PHP tags, echo surname. Done. So now we can return to our page. I'm going to enter Alex. I'm going to put my password in, and I'm going to type in my first name. Now if we click register, you can see that our username and our first name stay. Our surname's obviously blank because we didn't enter it in the first place, but our passwords have gone. This is just for security reasons. You don't want to keep the password in there. Most websites don't, so I don't recommend you do. Now if we click register, we haven't entered the password, so all fields are required again. We've clicked register, our information is staying, we enter our information, click register, and it's OK. So we've completed our form validation essentially, and if our form isn't filled, we keep in the values anyway in case, so users don't have to re-enter every bit of data. Now what we want to do is we want to compare the two passwords. So down here, after we've validated the form, we need to say, or partly validated, we need to say if password doesn't equal password again, do something, otherwise complete the rest of the registration. So in here, if it doesn't equal, we need to say passwords do not match. Okay, otherwise now we say okay. So let's click register.php. Right, so I can type my username in there. Let's go down and do our first name and surname first. So I'm going to type pass123, and in this one I'm going to type pass12. So this is one less character than this, therefore they don't match. So let's click register, and we get the error message, passwords do not match. So let's try again. Pass123, pass123, click register, it's okay, they match. So now that we're okay here, we need to start the registration process. But what we need to do is we need to check if the username already exists in the database. So how do we do this? Now we need to create a query. Let's just pull this down so we can have a bit of space. The query is going to be select, and we're going to select username from, so let's just pop this in apostrophes, select username from users. So remember, we're selecting, let's just go back to here, we select username from users where, oh, remember the apostrophe there, so where username equals, and now what we can do is substitute in the username that the user has supplied here, so we can say username. Now if this returns a row, what's going to happen is it means that the username already exists, because we're returning a row, which means we've successfully selected something where the username exists already. So now let's run the query. Let's put that into a new variable. So query run equals MySQL query. And what we need to do now is we need to count the amount of rows. So we say if MySQL num rows for query run, so remember the query running, is equal to 1 or is greater than or equal to 1. In the sense of this login and registration system, it will never be 2 or 3 or any higher. So we can leave this equal to 1 because remember, this process, the whole point of it is to not duplicate the username. So if the username equals 1, do something, otherwise do something else. In the case that it does equal 1, we need to say the username, concatenate on username that the username supplied already exists. Okay, so otherwise we're saying okay. So we're at the last part of our validation, where we're validating where now, not the form, but whether the username exists. So let's go back to our register page, blank that. Let's type in a username Alex, password pass123, pass123, first name Alex, surname Garrett. Now when I click the register button, we're going to do all the checks that we've already spoken about, but now we're going to check if the username exists. So let's check if that works. We'll click register. Oh, it says okay. Okay, so let's double check everything. Select, running that query, if MySQL query num rows equals 1, else okay. Okay, so let's test our query because it doesn't seem to be working as of yet. Let's pop that into our SQL tab up here to see what happens. Okay, so let's paste that in and click go. Returned an empty result set, so, oh no, sorry, that's going to be equal to Alex. Click go. Okay, so we are returning that value, and let's think why we're not getting any results. Okay, so let's echo out the username here just to go along with the process as we do it. So let's go back to our page here and type in our password again. Alex, okay, so obviously there's a problem with our query somewhere, because that username should be fed in properly. Now let's try to, I mean, it might be something simple that I'm completely missing. Let's try and echo out MySQL num rows of our query that we've run. See what that produces. Okay, we're not getting anything from that. So that means that no rows are being returned. Ah, okay. Yeah. Right, okay. So, what I've stupidly done is, perhaps you should learn from my mistake, is we have this lovely file up here called connect.inc.php, which I haven't actually included. So all of this is absolutely, well, just the query is useless. So let's go up, and I'm going to require connect.inc.php so I can connect to the database and therefore perform these operations correctly. So let's go back here and we'll re-type in pass123, pass123, click register. The username Alex already exists. Now let's try a different username, so we'll try, say, Josh, for example, and the password pass123, pass123, and click register. And that's okay because the password or the username Josh, for example, doesn't already exist. So we're down to the last stage of our registration, where now everything is okay. So we just need to register the user. One thing to note before we do so is we need a version of the password which is MD5 encrypted. So I'm going to say password hash equals MD5 of password. Okay, so we've got our password hash now that we can pop into the database. That will allow our login system to work correctly. Otherwise we're just going to be comparing an MD5 hash to plain data. So now what we can do is actually start the registration process. So we need a new query, and the new query is going to be query equals, so we need to now say insert into users values. And how many values have we got? Let's just go to our database and check. We have got, let's go back to our table. In fact, let's completely refresh that as well, so we're ready to use that in a minute. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, they're comma separated values. And what we're doing is we need to use the MySQL real escape string as well to stop SQL injection. So the first one is the username, then the password, then the first name, then the surname. So username, password, but password hash because we're storing it as MD5 data, first name and surname. But now what we need to do is just end that string there and concatenate on username. We can do the same with the password hash, I guess. End the string there and concatenate on first name, and then concatenate on the rest of the string. And then we do the same for the surname, so end, concatenate, concatenate, start. Okay, so now we can enclose these in MySQL real escape string, and the same with this. Ooh. And the same with the first name and the last name as well. So MySQL real escape string and MySQL real escape string. Okay, so now that we've done this should successfully register our user into the system. So we need to perform the query first. So query run is equal to MySQL query and then we put the string data of the query inside of that. We're going to turn this into an if statement to ensure that we tell the user if they've been successfully registered or not. So we can say if the query run equals MySQL query, so if this query there is successful, then we can say to the user echo successfully registered blah blah blah, but I'm going to tell you how we're going to do that in a minute. Otherwise, echo sorry, we couldn't register you at this time, try again later. So let's just escape that inverted comma there, single quotation mark if you like. Otherwise, we're going to say we're going to confirm that the user is registered. In fact, we're not. What we're going to do is we're going to locate them to a page that's going to tell them that they've successfully registered. And what this is going to do is it's going to stop them pressing F5 on their keyboard, refreshing the page and registering them again and again. I know that won't work, but it's a good practice to get into with a lot of data. So header, location, and we can call the page something like register success.php. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this register success.php file. Now you can bear in mind you could transfer over the get variables, so you could say u equals username, password equals p equals password or something, or just the username, but I'm just going to tell them they're registered for now on this page. So you've registered. Let's just call this page, what did we call it? Register success.php. Okay, so that's going to be it for now. I'll leave it up to you guys to use your imagination on this one. So let's test the process and see if we've got everything working. So register.php, I'm going to register a user called Dale. Password is going to be pass123, password again is going to be pass123, and then we're going to say Dale Garrett. We've bypassed all our security, our validation checks. Now check that the username's there, the password is matching. We click register. We're transferred to this register success page. You've registered. Perhaps you could have a link saying now you can log in, and we'll take ourselves back to the index.php file. Take a sneaking look inside here first, and you can see that all the data has been processed properly. We've got ID of 3 now, username Dale, the password matches that because all the passwords are the same, and we've got the first and last name. Now let's take Dale and password pass123 and click login, and you can see that we've successfully logged in as our new user. Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, back with another video for the New Boston. Now, in the user system we have completed everything and we have sorted out the form validation. Now there's a few points that we need to address before we continue any further. Let's just go back to our code and have a look, and then we're going to run the web page so we can see what the output of everything is. Okay, so at the moment we have our form here, which is actually re-echoing our data that's already been submitted in the form, which is fair enough. So when the user submits a username, let's say Alex, a password which we're not saving just for security reasons, and then a first name, let's say Alex, and then Garrett. Now what happens if they haven't submitted this data? We're just echoing it out as a variable, so we're just echoing out username, and then we're just echoing out first name, and then just surname. We're not saying has this data been submitted or not. And we also have another issue in, let's just open core.inc.php. We've got this HTTP referrer here. Now obviously the HTTP referrer is going to give us the page that we were referred from, so therefore if we were to open up our page and we were to go over to the register.php file, register.php, you can see that we are given a variety of errors. Now the error at the top is to do the HTTP referrer. It gives us an undefined index error, and what this means is that we have this variable here equal to an undefined index. This has not been defined anywhere because we haven't been referred from anywhere. If we had, say, a link on index.php and we were linking to this register page, then we would be able to would be able to have a referrer information would be sent. So how do we go and solve this problem? Well, it's quite simple. All we need to do is we need to come down a bit and we need to use an if statement to check if this here is already set before we define it. So let's just come up here and we'll say if is set, much like when we were doing the form validation on the register.php page, $_server and then HTTP referrer. So we're doing exactly the same thing. We're just saying, is it set? Has this been set? And we wrap that in the block. We could also say and not empty HTTP referrer, just for added peace of mind, I guess. This part here isn't important necessarily, but it just means, is it set and is it not empty? Remember, we're using the exclamation mark for not. Then we set the variable. So we only set this variable here if we've performed these checks correctly and this block is run. So therefore we're not going to receive an undefined index error because we're not setting a variable to something that doesn't exist, because these checks up here do the existence check for us. So let's go back and refresh. Okay, you can see that error's gone. Let's go back to the index page that core is included in as well, and you'll see that the error's gone as well. So we've solved part of our problem. Now you've probably noticed back on register.php we've got exactly the same error message. We've got here, notice undefined variable username in, and then it will tell us all of our information. This is a PHP error, but because we've echoed it out, let's just go down. Because we've echoed it out in the value property of our input type here, or our input field, it's given it to us with its HTML data. We've got the same here as well. Notice undefined variable first name, notice undefined variable surname. So how do we go about doing this? Well, we say that the exact same process applies to this code here, then we've just changed this here. So what we need to do is we need to say if, and then we start a block. So the block, if the condition is true, we're executing or running rather this block here. So if is set username, echo that, and then that's it. That solved our problem. So if is set username, then echo username. Otherwise, don't. We can put the and doesn't equal is not empty, but it's not terribly important for now. So let's refresh. And you can see that that's disappeared from there, so we've solved that one. Now let's just go down and correct the others. So we're using inline PHP here. We're saying if, and then we're, oh no, sorry, I've missed the echo there. So we put that echo back in the right place there. Then we need to obviously close our block. So again, if is set first name. So the type of error you see, you just need to look at it carefully and think, undefined variable. We have an undefined variable. Now, why might it be that we have undefined surname? Just look through your code, just examine your code and see what's happening. Obviously, we haven't submitted the form, so we've created these variables for ourselves to be able to use username, password. Now that we're using this username, first name and surname, what it's doing is it's grabbing data from post that hasn't actually been submitted. We're not posting the first name when we just land on register.php. So we need to incorporate checks that deal with errors like this, because the last thing you want to do is to be dealing with or showing these errors to your users. So let's make the change to the last one. Oh no, I've done that again. Where we take that array from there. So it can be a bit fiddly when you're writing all on one line, but you'll get used to it eventually. So I've just missed that error up there. Okay, so let's go back and refresh. Okay, so we've solved the two visible problems that we have. Now, let me just go ahead and register another user. Let's just say Craig. Password pass123. I've got my database up here, so I can click on my users and check how we're doing here. So password pass123, password. Oh no, sorry, pass123. First name Craig. Now let's have a look in our database at the length of the surname. So let's click on structure and see how many characters we have. So we're storing this as a variable character data type with 40 characters, maximum 40 characters. So what happens if we were to say, let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll do it another way. We'll say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, E, F. Sorry, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we can get rid of the K. So we've got 10 characters here. And the reason I'm doing it in as the alphabet is just so we can keep an eye on what's happening. So let me copy and paste that 4 times, or 3 more times. So we've got 3 instances now of this. Now what happens, or 4 instances of this, so we've got ABC up to J, then ABC up to J, and ABC up to J, and then ABC up to J. So we've got 4 lots of this. This is 40 characters long. So when we click register, this is going to be able to this is going to fit inside our surname field in our database. However, what happens if we let's say go back to our form and we copy and paste it in one more time? Now that's going to equal, I've copied and pasted it in another time, so we've got ABC up to J, up to J, up to J, up to J, up to J. So we've got 5 instances of this same text. So we've got 50 characters overall. Now let's click register. You've registered, so everything appears to have worked correctly. Now let's go and browse our table, and we'll come down. We can see that our username has been popped in. Now we need to I'm going to click on this sort of little edit button, and I'm going to have a look at what's been stored here. So we've got ABC up to J, ABC up to J, ABC up to J, and ABC up to J. Now we've only stored 40 of the 50 characters we entered, and the reason for this is our varchar only allows for 40 characters, as we've already looked at under the structure tab. So what we need to do is, when we're registering the user, we need to look at checking up here. We need to check how many characters each of these are, not including the password, because that's hashed to a 32 character hash anyway, using the MD5 function, so we don't need to worry about the password. It's just the username, first name and surname that we need to check. And we do have one other issue with the database, which is usernames. If I was to now register a username, let's say with the username Craig but with a small c, this is going to be allowed by our code. The reason being is we're not talking about we're looking at case sensitive comparison. So if I was to register a user on here called Craig, let's go back to the register page, with a small c, and Craig, and we'll just put I don't know, Garrett, or say Malcolm. Okay, so now let's click register. Oh no, username of Craig already exists. Maybe. Okay, yeah, maybe I'm wrong in that sense then. So we've got, yeah, okay. So we don't need to worry about that. So let's just focus on this maximum character amount we have. So what we're first of all going to do is edit our HTML form to only allow a maximum value to be submitted on the form. And this isn't going to entirely protect against inputting masses of data, because we're only allowing that within the HTML. Obviously someone could take your HTML page, they could change this to your server, so your domain and then the URL that register's located at, and they could submit the data from you know, a local PC, their own PC. So what we need to do is we need to change these fields to have a max value first. Then we need to check the length in PHP as well. So let's give it a property max length. And for username, let's just refer back to our database so we know exactly what lengths we're dealing with. So we've got 30 for the username, 32 for the password. Like I said, we don't need to worry about that because the hash is more or less always going to be 32 characters, and then 40 and 40 for the first name and surname. So we've got 30 for the username. For the first name, for the password, I'll give it 1 anyway. And perhaps you could specify a minimum length as well. Well, no, we can't actually do this, but I mean, in PHP, we could give it a minimum length that it needs to be for security reasons. In fact, I'll leave this out for now because I don't want to be writing too much code and waste too much time. So, max length. Okay, so we'll put a max length in here for the first name, and that's going to be 40, remember? Ooh, 40. And the same here for the surname, max length equals 40. So let's save that and go back to our page, and we'll just see how that's changed our form itself. Let's go back and register. Okay, so first name, let's type in a load of rubbish and we can see when it stops. Okay, you can see that I'm still typing. You can probably hear my keyboard, but you can see it's not typing anything. So that's okay. Let's do the same with surname. Okay, you can probably hear that I'm still typing, however, the input's not working. And then the same with username. Okay, you can see that stopped as well. So that's fair enough, but now we need to ensure that it's checked by our PHP script as well. Now I'm not going to be able to test, I'm not going to be testing this by sort of downloading this file and modifying it because I've already got access to it. So when we test it in PHP, I'm just going to remove the max length. So we've got max length of 30 for the username, 40 for the first name and surname. So let's come up and find out, where are we going to put this check? What's the best place that we could possibly put this check? Well, we're checking here if the username and everything else is not empty. So a good place to do it would be to do it underneath this, because we want to check the max length after we've checked that it's not empty. So let's we'll indent in, and then we'll indent the rest of our code in a minute. So we're going to create an if statement with a condition here, and then start a block. The block ends after this, so it would be down. Let's just double check where it would be. So if we come over to this one here, it's going to be if, and then if else. It would be here. So let's indent the rest of this. It might be there anyway, we might return an error, but it's hard to see when you're doing things like this. So what we want to say is, if strlen of username is greater than 30, and remember this is the condition, and then we say else the rest of the code. So if the string length of username is greater than 30, or the string length of first name is greater than 40, or the string length of surname is greater than 40, we need to echo, please adhere to max length of fields. Now the reason we're not giving a user-friendly message here is the only reason this would ever this error would ever be returned if someone had modified the form themselves. Max length is a standard property for input types, so therefore all browsers will pick up this max length, and they'll always allow you only a max length. So we're only doing this if people are going to mess around with our form. So let's change the max length up to 100 for each of them, so we can test this, and then we'll change them back in just a moment. Oh, I want to save that. Save. Okay. So let's refresh the page. Okay, so let's enter a load of rubbish into there. Okay, Let's enter a password sensibly because we need this to match. And a load of rubbish into here. And a load of rubbish into here. Let's click register. And it says please adhere to max length of fields. Okay, so now let's sensibly register a user. Okay, so let's click register. And it says you've registered. Let's go over to our database to check that everything's worked. And you can see that that's worked. So let's go back before we do anything else, or well, this is the end of the tutorial, but let's change these back, make sure you have your max length in here. So what we've done is we've corrected a few undefined variable and undefined index errors, and we've also changed a part of the form validation, which might not immediately be you know, a priority for some people. People might not think about it straight away, but you are in fact going to cut data off if you submit or allow your users to submit too much data. So for example, if it was a description about themselves, you might want to limit them to 200, 300, you know, 500 characters, but then you need to take into account that you need to limit them, otherwise your data is going to be cut off when you submit it in MySQL. There are some exceptions. You can give it the text data type, which will allow you, I can't remember how many characters, but quite a few characters, but always give a max length in your field, and also do the relevant checks inside your PHP code as well. Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is a video tutorial for the new Boston. Now, in this video we're going to be talking about SQL injection, but first of all we're going to be talking about what it is, and we're going to be creating a small program that's going to check a username and password. So we're going to be creating a program that's going to select a row from the database where a username and a password both match, therefore logging a user in successfully. So if you haven't already looked at the user system tutorials, go back and have a look at how we log users in. Otherwise, if you don't really want to do that, you can follow through anyway and have a look at what I'm doing here. So I'm going to be explaining what SQL injection is, and then I'm going to be giving some small tips to protect against it. So we're going to have some server-side tips and also tips in our code that we can use to help prevent, at least, against SQL injection. There are obviously many methods that you can use based on form validation, etc., adding slashes where quotes are, but we won't worry about that for now. We're just going to chat a bit about what SQL injection is. Now, if you've already looked at queries, you'll know that a structured query is something that we use to retrieve information from a database or insert the data. We can also delete data, etc. So when you're supplying a command or an SQL statement, for example, to say select data from a database, we do something like this. So let's open an SQL tab here. Now you see that we've got, let's just go back so we can see. You can see that we've got username and password. Now if I was to select a row from this table, we've got a database called a database and a table called users. We've got an ID field, a username field, a password field, and an email field, which isn't relevant to this tutorial, nor is so much the ID field here. So username and password. Let's go ahead and create an SQL query that's going to select a username and password. So we start with select, and then we say select, we can select the ID from, we supply the table that we're selecting from, so users here, where, so select ID from users where username, make sure that's in apostrophes, username equals Alex, and password equals pass123, for example. So I'm going to copy that into my clipboard so I can use it later on. When I click go, you can see that we've returned one row. We've returned the ID of the row where the username and password both match. Now, for example, if I was to copy and paste this back in here, but change the password slightly, so blah, for example, as the password, you'll notice that we won't return any rows. Okay, so MySQL returned an empty result set. Now in PHP we handle this using the MySQL numRow function, and what we do is we say if our query, so based on the user's input of the username and the user's input of the password, if the MySQL query or the result or the num rows that are returned, the number of rows that are returned, are equal to 1 or greater than or equal to 1, we know that we've successfully logged the user in, because they've supplied information which makes this query work. So like I said, if you don't understand at this point, it's a good idea to go back and check on the username and the login and register tutorials where we set sessions for our users. We perform this kind of validation. But what we do need to do is protect against SQL injection. Now let's take a look at what SQL injection is. Let's just browse our database, and we can go back to our text editor. So let's get rid of these tags, and let's construct the query that we've just done. So we've got select ID from users where username is Alex and password is blah. Let's just say up here we have username equals and $_post username, and we have password and exactly the same thing, but this time we are selecting password. Now these are presumably two fields that we have in an HTML document that are HTML on the page that a user can enter their username and password. So they can enter absolutely any value they want into here, be it alphanumeric characters, just numbers, we can have characters, anything we want. So the user has submitted their own data, which then goes into this query, and we've seen this by just literally substituting in the variables here and here. Now this query will then select a username and password from the database that her user has supplied. So let's say that they enter username, I'll just put it here. So let's say the username they enter is Alex, and the password that they enter is pass123.